Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be back on live. It's Hollie Tkac here. I'll write my name on the board in case you needed to know. And this is Unicorn TV episode 30. Unicorn TV 30, that's kind of cool, right? I should have not glazed over that. But this is a show, I was going to say a weekly, but I've totally not been consistent. And you can tell if you look at my videos on this page. But it was a show I started back in like April, just to share tips and tricks to help you create the life of your dreams, the business of your dreams. Mostly through having a business is the kind of people I help. Because I do think that that's the kind of people I want to serve, the ones that want to have their own business, create their own rules, live life by their own rules and all of that. And so I share content on this show that's around that. And so this is episode 30. Today I'm talking about how I went from getting 0 to 20 replies on my emails. And so let me give you a little bit of a backstory. This will be more of a tactical writing strategy kind of live. Sometimes I talk about mindset, but this one's a tactical strategy. I said strategical to somebody just now, and so that's in my head, but I'm like, that is not a real word. So tactical, strategical live. So it's going to be about how you can write an email that is engaging. And so let me give a little bit of backstory. I feel like I'm so annoyed to see this like light switch. I'm trying to, so here, okay. Oop. Okay. Okay. So, sorry about that. My knee hit my little table. I have like, if you guys saw the setup, you'd laugh. I have like a TV tray with my computer on it because this is like the background that I like to have. But normally, obviously, I'm working with my desk. So, anywho, I've been writing emails to my list I've basically been doing 2 to 3 a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. But I've been writing an email every week to my list since December. And sometimes those emails typically fall into 2 buckets. One bucket is they're asking people to book a call with me. And then another bucket is that they are asking the person reading to reply and just engage with me and say if the content if they related to the content or whatever. And so for the past, whenever I write those emails that are like, hit reply to tell me if this resonates with you, I usually was getting no replies, 0, okay? And people were reading them, but I was getting 0 replies. So that kind of sucked. Didn't feel good, but I couldn't really crack the code on why that was happening. And so I ended up I'm in a really good business coaching program myself right now, and I have access to several different people for coaching calls if I need it. So I finally got a call with this lady, one of the ladies who's really strong with copy. And so we had 15 minutes, which, by the way, is actually enough time for a call. When I first signed up for the program, I'm like, can you really do a lot in 15 minutes? But you can. So I met with her and I wanted her to review an email I had just sent and give me feedback. I figured that would be the best way to use her time because she's really a copy expert. So I did that, and she reviewed an email I had sent, which is one of those ones I just told you, where I was just asking people to reply back and no one replied. And so we reviewed that together. She gave me some feedback. Then I went and we also kind of wrote another email together on the phone. That was also one of those ones where I'm just asking for a reply. And so I refined that email and I sent it, and I got like 8 replies. Then I sent 2 more the next week that were the same thing, just like, hey, reply back if this resonates, kind of a deal. And I got 8, 9, 10 replies to both of those. And those ones I wrote completely myself. And so the tips that she showed me really made something click in my mind. And I really feel like I am doing way better on connecting with my audience based on the feedback I'm getting. Like, that's why if you're ever getting an email from somebody and you really appreciate it, write them back, because it helps us have feedback, helps us see what, our audience wants to learn and all of that. So that being said, I wanted to share some of those things that I learned from her in this broadcast so that you too can take it and use it when you write emails. I think these tips work best for emails, for social media copy, things where you want a reply or them to take action, right? So your website, of course, it applies, but I think really I'm focused more on emails and maybe social media copy with this. So let's get on to the tips. I have 4 tips. I think I might add a 5th one, and I don't want to forget it. So thanks, guys. I don't want to forget it. So I have notes. I try not to overplan because I don't want to overplan my lives, to be honest, because I find it draining. But I tried to have notes today. I do have notes today. So go me. All right. So the first thing is something I've heard and said so many times, and yet I feel like I didn't really understand what it meant. And I have now a new way of explaining it. So I think that it'll really help. So the first tip is to talk to one person. So talk to one person is tip number 1. So when you're talking to one person, what does that mean? That means actually pretend like you're writing to one person. And I would actually, the tip that coach gave me that I love was actually think about one person. When you're thinking about the message, like, I want to share, I'll go into one of the ones I sent last week that went really well. I shared an email about how I had to move home to my parents' house. And I was scared to do that, but I was like, I want to share this because I want to share that, I've had to do something like this that I didn't necessarily want to do when I decided to do it fully, but I'm okay. I'm living. I made it through. There's positives to it, yada, yada. So I was like, who do I really want to hear this message? And so I actually thought about somebody on my list, or like that I knew by name, and I just wrote it to them. This isn't the name, but I just said, like, you'd say her name was Susan. Then I would actually say, dear, hey, Susan, and like start the email. And like anytime I wanted to say their name, I would say Susan. And then, when I actually load it into my tool, I'll replace that with the first name tag. But really own that idea of talking to one person. And along with that, tip that goes with tip 1B, I want to talk about editorial versus personal. This was the hugest thing I got out of my coaching call that I want to share with you. So editorial versus personal, the email that we reviewed together that I had already sent that didn't get any replies, I started that email something along the lines of, hey, Susan, say it was a name, hey, name, in the last email, I said, I talked about blah, 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 blah. And, she told me, the coach I was talking to said, that sounds like editorial. That sounds like an article. It doesn't sound like an email. Like, would you actually email a friend and say it that way? Like, in my last email, I said blah, 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 blah. Like, no, I actually would never say that to a friend. So she recommended to start with like something that you'd really say to somebody, or like a real friend that you're emailing with an anecdote or something. And so in her, like, for example, you could say, hey, Susan, quick story for you today. Or, hey, Susan, I can't believe I'm going to tell you this, but, or, something like more like you'd really write to a friend. And so that has changed my life because I did that on all of the emails after this, and I have gotten so many replies from that. And I think the reason that it works, especially with emails, is because when somebody opens an email, if they get to the point of opening it, which that's all about the subject line, then they'll read the first line and they'll decide if they want to continue. And when it's really sounds personal like that, like I sent them a personal note, they're way more likely to be hooked in to read the rest of it, versus if it sounds like an article that, I'm sending them, they're not going to be hooked in. So tip 1B related to writing to one person is making sure you have a personal tone and not an editorial tone. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is you want to make the lesson clear. So what are you trying to actually share in this email? So like I said, in the example I was talking about, I wanted to share about all these transitions I went through and just basically reveal that I had moved home to my parents, because I felt like I wasn't being authentic without sharing that, and like kind of just like clearing the air. I felt like I was trying to hide it. So that was my intention. And the reason I wanted to do that so bad is because I think being honest and vulnerable helps bring healing. And that's the thing that people can take out of the email for themselves. Like if they're honest and vulnerable about their situation, it can help heal them. So with that in mind, I made sure to state that that was the reason why I was sharing it. And so a line I really like to use to do this is to just say, the reason I'm sharing this with you is blah, 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 blah. So after I tell the story or whatever, the content, make it really clear, like the reason I'm sharing this to you is like I personally want to heal this, but also you can heal something you're dealing with too if you just share it. So just make it really clear and just say what you want, why you're sharing what you're sharing. So that's a quick one, but that's the tip. Okay, so tip number 3 is to focus on them and not you. So this also kind of goes to what I just said, but you want to focus on them and what they're doing. Why does it relate to them? And so what that means for me personally is I know that I can get a little too into the details of the story that are just not something somebody would care about. And I care about it. I think it provides context, but then when I edit it, I'm like, I don't need to keep this in. I think it's a little too much info. Like people aren't going to care. So that being said, I really think that you need to be mindful of this and to be focused on them and not you when you're writing something. And so one way you can do this is make sure that the details you're including are what's necessary and not over and above what's necessary. And then also pay attention to when you say I or me, because that's talking about you. And is there a way to phrase that so that it's more focused on them and what they're supposed to get out of the story? You can't never say I or me in writing. Like sometimes you're going to need to say that, but just be mindful, because there are sometimes ways to change those statements, to remove those words and to make it more focused on the reader. So then the last and final tip I want to share with you is being vulnerable. I hope I spelled that right. I think so. So like I told you, I wrote that email about moving home. I was scared to do that and scared to share that, but also felt compelled to do so. And being vulnerable like that, I think really, really helped with the response that I got. And in this next email I wrote that week, I also was vulnerable because I shared about how I canceled the trip to Bali that I was supposed to take and that I had shared publicly. And I felt like really afraid to share that because I thought, oh, people would think I'm a failure, blah, blah, blah. Which, I mean, honestly, who cares, right? Hardly anyone's even asked me about it. So it's not like everyone was keeping tabs on if I was going or not. But I just felt like a lot of emotion around that just because of the way I had shared it publicly. And then I was retracting it. And so I shared that, like I felt that way. And I think, I know that also connected with my audience. And I got so many replies saying like, yes, I worry too much about what other people think too. So my reason for that email was to share like, hey, look, I worry too much about what other people think sometimes, and I can't do that, and you shouldn't do that either. It just doesn't help anybody. So that's tip number 4. So again, if you want to write an email that actually connects with your audience, here are the tips I have for you. Talk to one person and make it personal versus editorial sounding. Tip number 2 is to make the lesson very clear. Tip number 4 is to focus, or 3, sorry. I have to, yeah. Tip number 3 is to focus on them and not you. And then tip number 4, like I said, is to be vulnerable, and don't be afraid of that, because that's really what people connect with. So I hope this helped. Those are my 4 tips. I am about to go live. If you want to apply this to your own writing, book a call with me and let's talk about how you can really start connecting with your writing, because that's my specialty. That's what I help with, and that's what I'm very good at. So I'm going to edit the description of this video to include a link to book a 30-minute client attraction call with me, because this stuff attracts clients. Like I said, I got 20 replies over those 2 emails with people I can engage with that could become clients for me. So this stuff attracts clients. Book a call with me if you want to apply it to your own business, and we can talk about how to do that. And I'm about to go live in my Facebook group, which I'm going to start giving customized trainings in that group that are only in that group, where I go into more depth with actual stuff that I'm doing in my business and things like that. So if that interests you as well, please join my group so you can get access to those. All right, folks. Oh, crap. One more thing. Sorry I'm throwing so much at you, but I am hosting a free webinar on Monday that's all about the 4 tweaks, the 4 weird tweaks I made that helped me triple my income. So if that intrigues you, please check that out as well. All of those links will be in the description to this video after I log off. Bye, guys. See ya.